At first glance, it looked like a postcard from a forgotten summer wheat swaying under an endless blue sky, barefoot children racing through golden fields, and a silence so perfect it felt rehearsed. But nothing in this world was as it seemed. Not the smiles, not the warmth, not even the light. The Reflecting Skin isn't a horror film in the traditional sense. It doesn't chase you with knives or haunt you with ghosts. Instead, it sits quietly beside you, whispering memories that might not be yours until you start to question which version of reality you're watching. Directed by Philip Ridley and largely overlooked upon release, this 1,990 film grew in the shadows of cult cinema. Its beauty was deceptive, its meaning uncertain, and its danger hidden in plain sight. For years, rumors swirled of a different version, a colder, harsher cut that vanished after test screenings. Others fixated on the imagery: a fetus with wings, a boy set ablaze, a woman mistaken for something not quite human. Everyone saw something different. No one agreed on what it meant. Maybe that's the point, because this wasn't just a story about innocence lost. It was about how memories lie and how film can be the most beautiful liar of all. These are 20 weird facts you didn't know about. The Reflecting Skin. 1,990. Fact 1. The light was a lie. Despite its sun-drenched glow, the reflecting skin was never meant to feel warm. The golden tones that flood every frame weren't captured during the cinematic magic hour, but under the most unforgiving midday sun manipulated to deceive. Director Philip Ridley envisioned the film's world as a mythic mirage, a place where everything looked holy but felt cursed. To achieve that look, the crew engineered complex lighting rigs using reflective panels, colored gels, and oversized scrims to create a surreal, almost radioactive brightness. The heat was brutal. Cast and crew nicknamed the setup the Toaster, as actors squinted through sweat under an artificial sun that refused to dim. Some distributors objected. They argued the saturated look made the film too pretty to be disturbing. That feedback led to the controversial color grade adjustment before release, a move Ridley reportedly never endorsed. The version we know today? It's not quite the one he intended. It's a visual paradox. Light so intense, it ends up obscuring everything underneath. Fact 2. The vampire that never fed. From her spectral appearance to her black-clad figure gliding through fields, Dolphin Blue looks like something from a Hammer film. To many viewers, she's a vampire, elegant, tragic, and deadly. But the truth is more complicated. Philip Ridley has repeatedly denied that the film contains any supernatural creatures. Dolphin isn't undead. She's not a blood drinker. She's a widow, drowning in despair. Her perceived vampirism is a projection, the fevered imagination of a child trying to make sense of adult pain and death. Everything we see is filtered through the eyes of young Seth, whose trauma manifests in monsters. And Ridley leaned into that distortion, crafting Dolphin's aura to mirror classic horror tropes only to dismantle them. So, was she ever dangerous? Maybe, but not in the way a vampire is. Her danger lies in being misunderstood and in what children invent to fill the silence adults leave behind. Fact 3. The poster that betrayed the film. The American poster for The Reflecting Skin promised something it could never deliver and never intended to. A black and white image of a screaming boy with an ominous shadow looming behind him adorned VHS shelves and theater lobbies. It looked like promotional art for a vampire thriller, but the image was staged months after production, using a different child actor, fabricated lighting, and deliberate misdirection. The boy in the poster isn't even in the movie. Why the deception? US distributors feared the film was too poetic and not scary enough to market as horror. So they packaged it as something it wasn't, a genre film filled with jump scares and bloodshed. The fallout was immediate. Viewers went in expecting fangs and fright, and instead found slow-burning dread, surreal imagery, and grief painted across wheat fields. Many walked out confused. Some were angry. Critics dismissed it as false advertising. But maybe the poster wasn't lying, just foreshadowing. Because The Reflecting Skin was never about what it showed. It was always about what it refused to explain. Fact 4. The frog scene was too convincing. Few opening scenes in film are as unsettling as a group of boys gleefully inflating a frog with a straw, then hurling it toward a stranger's home where it bursts in a sickening splash. Audiences recoiled. Critics protested. Animal rights groups demanded answers. The BBFC halted the UK release until director Philip Ridley could prove the frog hadn't been real. It wasn't. The prop was a blend of rubber, gelatin, and fake blood designed to rupture on impact. The effect was practical, not cruel, and yet the realism was so intense that even some members of the production team questioned it. A rumor circulated on set that an earlier take had used a real frog, Ridley denied it. No such footage exists, but the myth persisted, becoming part of the film's eerie legacy. Whether the frog was fake or not ceased to matter. What mattered was how quickly innocence turned violent and how easily cruelty could wear a child's face. Fact 5. The score was missing for 25 years. Nick Bickett's haunting score lingers long after the credits roll, a melancholic blend of lullaby and lament. But for decades, it was practically impossible to find. No official soundtrack was released when the film debuted. The original master recordings were shelved, misplaced, and nearly destroyed during the liquidation of a London post-production facility. Bootleg audio circulated among collectors, often sourced from deteriorating VHS tapes or fan-subbed laserdiscs. Years later, Bickett unearthed backup tapes in his personal archive. In 2015, the full soundtrack was finally restored and released. One track in particular, Butterfly, stood out for fans. It played during both moments of tenderness and horror, blurring the emotional boundaries the film thrived on. The missing music became symbolic, a part of the film that refused to surface until it was ready, or until someone cared enough to go looking. Fact: Viggo Mortensen almost didn't join. Before he was Aragorn, Viggo Mortensen was a last-minute lifeline for the reflecting skin. The role of Cameron, the older brother returning from war, was originally cast with another actor who exited just weeks before filming. The production was already operating on a razor-thin budget. Losing a key performer could have derailed everything. Then Mortensen arrived. Fresh off an obscure indie project, he agreed to join under one condition: Cameron wouldn't speak much. Mortensen believed the character's trauma should manifest physically in posture, in silence, in lingering stares. Ridley agreed. He rewrote dialogue, cut lines, and allowed Mortensen to communicate in glances. What emerged was a performance that felt ghostly, present, yet somehow unreachable, a man not so much alive as merely surviving. Cameron didn't need words. His silence was the loudest thing in the film. Fact 7. The lead child was kept in the dark. Jeremy Cooper, who played the central role of Seth Dove, wasn't given a full script, not even close. Director Philip Ridley made a deliberate and controversial decision. Cooper would only receive instructions for each scene as it came. No overarching story, no explanations, just carefully crafted directions whispered to him moments before the camera rolled. The idea wasn't to protect him, it was to preserve something raw, a sense of genuine confusion and emotional uncertainty. When Cooper reacts with unease or detachment, it's real. He didn't know what came next. He didn't even know what kind of film he was in. In one interview, Ridley recalled telling Jeremy before an emotional scene, "Pretend the world just stopped breathing." That was the direction, nothing more. Critics later praised the boy's distant, unreadable performance. But behind that performance was a child who was never fully let in. To this day, Cooper has said he's not sure what the reflecting skin was about, and maybe that's why it still works. Fact 8. Too beautiful to be scary. When the film was submitted to international festivals, a surprising reaction emerged. Some juries rejected it not for being too dark, but for being too stunning. At the Locarno Film Festival, judges debated whether it even qualified as horror. The wheat fields glowed like paintings. The lighting felt sacred. The framing was so deliberate, it seemed to elevate the material beyond genre. One juror reportedly said, "It's not horror, it's grief disguised as art." The festival eventually pulled the film from horror competition altogether, not because it lacked impact, but because it didn't fit their box. The horror wasn't loud or grotesque. It was quiet, slow, and beautiful. Beauty can be terrifying, but only if you're willing to look past the light. Fact 9. The angel was made of meat. Among the film's strangest images is the grotesque angel, a pale, bloated creature found decaying in a barn, never explained and never named. What few know is that the creature wasn't rubber or animatronic. It was a handmade abomination: whale flesh, latex tubing, and pig entrails, molded together and left under hot studio lights to rot. The smell was unbearable. Cast and crew wore masks. Some refused to go near it. Originally, Ridley wanted the angel to appear almost peaceful, a dried husk, delicate and still. But when the prop team brought in this putrid, melting nightmare, he changed his mind. "This is better," he said. "It should feel like divinity gone rancid." The angel was never meant to be understood. It was meant to unsettle a holy thing that rotted before anyone noticed. Fact 10. The fire went too far. In one of the film's most harrowing moments, a young boy douses himself in gasoline and ignites a blaze of silent horror beneath the harsh Sunday. What audiences didn't know was how dangerously close the production came to a real tragedy. The stunt was tightly choreographed. The actor wore fire-resistant gel and a heat-proof suit underneath his clothes. But the Alberta heat was relentless that day, pushing the suit beyond its limits. When the flames erupted, they spread faster than anticipated, creeping up to the actor's exposed neck. He stayed in character. The crew kept filming. Only after the shot was complete did anyone realize he'd suffered burns serious enough to require medical attention. Ridley later admitted he couldn't watch the footage again. "We wanted the fire to look real, and then it was," he said. "Sometimes realism has a cost, and this scene paid more than it should have." Fact 11. It was mistaken for a lost movie. In the early 2000s, grainy digital rips of The Reflecting Skin surfaced online under a different title, The Dying Sunday. It had no credits. The color was faded, the audio warped. For weeks, horror forums treated it as a mysterious discovery, a lost film from the 70 seconds, never released. The strange pacing and surreal images only added to the legend. No one connected it to Ridley's work. Not until a still from the Angel scene was reverse image searched, revealing its true identity. Some fans were disappointed. Others said the bootleg version, degraded and nameless, made the film even more powerful. Maybe they were right. In many ways, The Reflecting Skin feels like something not meant to be found, something passed between dream and decay. Fact 12. The crows were tranquilized. Throughout the film, crows perch like statues, unmoving, unblinking, always watching. Their eerie stillness adds a surreal weight to several scenes. They weren't CGI, they weren't puppets. They were real birds sedated to remain motionless on cue. An animal wrangler administered low-dose sedatives approved by Canadian regulators at the time. The birds were carefully placed on branches and filmed in short bursts. Between takes, handlers monitored their breathing and body temperature. The production followed all legal guidelines, but even then, some on set were uncomfortable. The resulting image was hypnotic. The birds didn't caw, didn't twitch. They simply sat, black against gold, as if sentient. Today, such a method would be unacceptable. But back then, it was just another way to make the impossible look real. And it worked. Too well. Fact 13. The colors were changed behind his back. The film's iconic golden hue wasn't always golden, nor was it always welcome. Philip Ridley initially completed The Reflecting Skin with a colder, muted color palette, one that emphasized desolation and emotional distance. Early cuts screened in Europe reflected this vision. But when American distributors got involved, they made a unilateral decision: brighten it, warm it up, and give it a summer glow. The film was regraded to appear more luminous, more marketable, and Ridley wasn't consulted. By the time he saw the final version, it had already been locked. He never publicly condemned the decision, but he also never endorsed it. In later interviews, he would refer to the theatrical release as a compromise with sunlight. Ironically, that very warmth became part of the film's legend. The brightness now feels threatening, like the sun itself is complicit in the violence. But we may never see the version Ridley really intended. Fact 14. No one got the same script. To preserve ambiguity, Ridley employed a strategy rarely used outside experimental theater. He gave each actor a different version of the story. Lindsay Duncan was told her character represented grief given form. Mortensen was told to act as if Cameron had already died spiritually, if not physically. Jeremy Cooper, of course, was told almost nothing at all. The result was a dissonant, disjointed, emotional landscape. Characters seemed to move past one another without truly connecting. Viewers felt off balance, unsure of who to trust or believe. Critics accused the film of lacking cohesion, but that was the point. In a world shaped by trauma and filtered through a child's eyes, truth doesn't line up. It refracts. It contradicts. And every person walks through the same story differently. Fact 15. The final scream came from real life. The last scene shows Seth, small and overwhelmed, screaming against the sky as his brother's body floats in the water. It feels like a primal moment, operatic, mythic, but it was inspired by something brutally mundane. Years earlier, Ridley had witnessed a child standing by a riverbank as paramedics pulled a drowned man from the water. The child wasn't crying, he wasn't screaming. He just stood there, rigid, silent, and clearly too young to understand. That image haunted Ridley. When crafting the ending of The Reflecting Skin, he didn't want a dramatic resolution. He wanted confusion, the kind of grief that hasn't formed language yet. That's why Seth doesn't cry. He screams because he's not mourning death. He's meeting it for the first time and realizing it won't explain itself. Fact 16. It began as a play no one wanted. Before it was a film, The Reflecting Skin was a play. A strange, one-act chamber piece called Seth's World, never performed, never produced. Philip Ridley wrote the script while still in his 20s. It featured only 3 characters, minimal staging, and no clear explanation for the surreal events unfolding. Theaters turned it down. One rejection letter called it emotionally violent and theatrically inert. Another simply said, "We don't do nightmares." Ridley let it sit for years. When he returned to it, the language stayed, but the medium changed. He took the themes of decay, guilt, and innocence under siege and reframed them through a cinematic lens. The wheat fields replaced the black box stage. The silences became wider. The horror became prettier. Yet something theatrical lingers. The dialogue, the framing, the stillness. It was a play no one wanted, so he made it a film no one could ignore. Fact 17 Ampere's Plague Without a Name. Though never spoken outright, many believe The Reflecting Skin is a veiled elegy for the AIDS crisis. There are no references to disease, no diagnosis. But Cameron's wasting body, the unspoken fear, the isolation, they echo real-world horrors of the late 80 seconds and early 90 seconds. Communities watching young men vanish, rumors replacing facts, children left to imagine their own explanations. Ridley never confirmed the allegory, but he once hinted in an interview, "Some truths are easier to express when dressed in other myths." In early script drafts, Cameron's illness was referred to only as the sickness. By the final version, even that was removed. Silence became the point. Grief became color-coded, and terror took the form of metaphor. It wasn't just about one boy's family, it was about a whole generation watching their brothers disappear. Fact 18, the film that shut doors. The Reflecting Skin marked Ridley's directorial debut. It also nearly ended his career. Despite a few awards and scattered praise, the film's limited release and confused reception left studios wary. They didn't know how to market him. Was he an art house surrealist? A horror auteur? A dramatist? No one was sure, and so no one called. Actors fared no better. Lindsay Duncan found herself typecast in roles requiring melancholy elegance. Jeremy Cooper left acting entirely. Mortensen would go on to greatness, but not because of this film. He's rarely spoken about it since. Ridley wouldn't direct another movie for 9 years. He later described that silence as an echo chamber where the only thing I could hear was the film itself. Sometimes, a story is too strange for the system that births it. Fact 19, it was quietly pulled to avoid an X rating. When The Reflecting Skin was submitted for classification in the United States, the MPAA didn't reject it for violence, profanity, or nudity. They objected to tone. The film's depiction of children in proximity to death, madness, and implied sexual trauma pushed it into uncomfortable territory. A few brief moments, like the unsettling relationship between Seth and Dolphin, were cited as inappropriate within a psychological horror framework. The board recommended an X rating unless changes were made. Ridley refused to alter anything. The result? The film was pulled from a planned U.S. theatrical run. It was later released on VHS without an official MPAA rating, bypassing standard channels and disappearing into the cult underground. Years later, the director remarked, "They were okay with blood, they weren't okay with silence. That says everything." In the end, it wasn't a scene that doomed the film. It was a feeling, one that couldn't be regulated, only buried. Fact 20, no one knows what the title means. The Reflecting Skin. It sounds poetic, ominous, almost holy, but what does it actually mean? Fans have debated it for decades. Some say it refers to the boy's sunburned flesh, raw and blistered under unforgiving light. Others point to the angelic corpse in the barn, its skin glistening like prophecy. A few interpret it as metaphor. Skin is memory, skin is shame, skin is a mirror we can't turn away from. When asked, Ridley never explained, not once. Titles are spells, he once told a journalist. Break them and you lose their power. So the title remains untouched, undefined, and heavy with suggestion. Like the film itself, it offers no answers, only reflection. Bonus fact: the landscape doesn't exist anymore. The vast fields, the empty roads, the golden light that never seemed to end. Much of what defines The Reflecting Skin visually is now gone, erased not by time, but by development. The film was shot in the rural outskirts of Alberta, on a stretch of farmland rented from a private landowner. At the time, it was remote, untouched, and hauntingly still, the perfect canvas for a story about beauty hiding rot. But in the late 1990 seconds, the land was sold. The barn was demolished. The wheat fields became residential plots. Today, if you visit the area, you won't find silence or sunburnt crops. You'll find cul-de-sacs, retail parking lots, and satellite dishes. The dirt road where Seth screamed at the sky now leads to a chain pharmacy. Fans who have searched for the filming locations report a strange sense of disorientation. The movie lingers, but the space no longer holds it. The world, the reflecting skin, showed us never truly existed, and now it never can again. The horror didn't end, it was paved over. And like memory, it fades not when we forget, but when the world decides to forget for us. Which of these facts changed how you see the reflecting skin? Was it the vanished landscapes, the untold title, or the fire that went too far? Tell us in the comments what meaning you found behind the wheat fields and which hidden films we should explore next. If you found something in the silence or saw yourself in the shadows, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the story. Because some films aren't meant to be explained, only uncovered.